Kia ora koutou, I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller and welcome to our Smash online event. Firstly, a huge thank you to our Smash sponsors, Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer, LIC and Rabobank. We value their support and without it, our online and in-person events just wouldn't happen. Planning is well underway for our next season of Smash events, so keep an eye on our Facebook page for all the information or sign up through our website smallerherds.co.nz to receive updates straight into your inbox. Summer last season was particularly challenging. Many farmers have had, well, a tough, wet winter to say the least. Feed reserves are low and supplement prices are high. Is it all doom and gloom? Well, the sun can seem a long way off, and it's time to start thinking about how you can best prepare to cope with this year's dry summer conditions. So to discuss this further, we're going to catch up with Waikato farmer Matthew Zonderop and Wade Bell from Pioneer Brand Products. Matthew is 50-50 share milking 400 crossbred cows in a System 1 at Te Poi in Waikato. He grows maize, turnips and chicory. And Wade is well known, almost needs no introduction. He's a farm system specialist for Pioneer, supporting farmers to get the most from their chosen farm system. Before that, he was an independent farm consultant in the Waikato, Dairy NZ regional manager, and a rural banker. He's also a Smash committee and trust member, and he has a wealth of knowledge that we're so lucky to draw on. Matthew and Wade are going to be very happy to answer your questions, so throw them some toughies. Just write them in the comments section on Facebook or sign into YouTube and do it there. And with that, I'll hand over to Wade.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Great to be here again and really good to have you online too there, Matt. So hopefully we'll have a good sort of half hour catch up that a few others online can stream into and hopefully pick out a few hints and tips in terms of what you get up to. But just by way of probably providing a little bit of context to start with, Matt, around your farm system, it helps people understand kind of the not only where you farm but the way you farm, if you like. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into the farm system? We've got a few of the points there up on screen, but perhaps just provide a little bit more colour in terms of what that looks like on farm.
Sure, Wade. Thanks very much. Yeah, guys, we, as it says there, System 1, so we don't import any feed onto the farm. It's all homegrown. So that's the maize is all homegrown, turnips is homegrown, and we also do a small amount of area for the calves using chicory. We're at the base of the Kaimai here in Te Poi, so we're a stone's throw away really from some extra rainfall that a lot of people don't get in the region. Not all of the time though. We can actually see the bands shifting along the base without us actually getting anything. So it can be tough some days, and other times it's not so bad. We're milking, usually we peak around 395 to 400 cows, crossbred cows on our system. Our milking platform is 140 hectares. And as you can read there, the calves stay on farm basically from July until the 1st of May when we do a changeover, and that's when the heifers at grazing come back onto the farm. So we are in a constant shuffle of stock all the year. So there's never a period where we're not moving stock around on farm. So one of our key real roles is obviously pasture management, which is key to this system. And to be able to run the system, we have to monitor our pastures very closely.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, System 1s are a bit of a rarity these days, to be fair, Matt. And I suppose that challenge of bridging some of that summer-autumn feed gap is pretty significant when you can't bring feed in from other sources. So we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. One of the other things there, you've once a day or 10 and 7 from Christmas. is that a kind of a season dependent or pretty much a policy for the operation?
Yeah, that's pretty much a policy for the operation. Really, by the time we've hit Christmas, we've done 2/3 of our production is done by Christmas. So after that, it's either it's too hot, there's flies, and we really do start to battle the elements. We are a flat farm as such, but we do have a couple of hills that the cows have to climb over summer. They're not bad, obviously compared to some areas, around the country. But with our system being a system 1 and so heavily reliant on grass, we have to take the pressure off at some point of the animal. So we find that around Christmas time, between Christmas New Year, we go once a day or 10 and 7. 10 and 7 is more of a transition to once a day. And we find the cows respond quite well to that, and they just keep on trucking. We're able to maintain condition quite well with that system. And then also for when we start utilising our crops, we're not having to start to walk big distances to and from crops, back to the shed, back to the paddock, etc. If we'd have to milk twice a day over the summer.
Yeah, nice. So just in terms of how things are looking on the farm at the moment, before we get into the content itself, how are things? And I've got a couple of photos there that were taken in the last sort of week or so, but can you give us a quick snapshot of how it's looking at the moment? Hopefully a little drier today than it was when those photos were taken, but a bit of an update.
Yeah, we're hoping we're going to get a pasture ride done yesterday, but we use a CDAX pasture meter, and unfortunately the sensor died on us. So sorry we couldn't provide you actually with any data, up-to-date data. But we're sitting on an average pasture cover at the moment of about 2,000. Cows are going into probably 2,700 at the moment. And as you can see there in the middle photo, that's the sort of residuals that we're leaving behind. I'm really, really happy with the residuals there. The cows are in pretty good nick considering what we've come out of over the autumn. We were pretty dry here and hard hit over the autumn, so it was hard going. But we're level pegging on production for last year. So the same amount of urea is going on at the same rate, roughly the same time as last year. We don't chop and change too much with the system, and even though we've had more rainfall than last year, in particularly the last 10 days when we did get all that rain, it was warmer rain. So I was quite surprised that we did actually grow grass in that period. We've been taking the soil temperature the last few days as well, because around this time in a normal sort of season, this is the time when I do start to panic a little bit. Our soil temperature is sitting around the 11.5, 12 degrees. Monday it was 14, Tuesday 14, wow. And Monday 15, and Tuesday, Wednesday it was 14 degrees. So it's starting to move, and we're actually starting to see that now on the grass as well. So it's turning, but I'm a big fan of the spring rotation planter. And obviously with our system, we don't have the luxury of being able to pull the cord in the shed as such. Supplements, we've only on hand, we've got 58 bales left at the moment. So supplements on hand are very low. So we've really got to follow the spring rotation planter to the hectare at the moment, and we're matching it on a daily basis on area grades, grass growth rates, where we've got to be around the 15th of September. So we're not far on farm before we can really start reaping the benefits of the hard work we've put in over the early or late winter time.
Yeah, perfect. Cheers, Matt. So So some of the viewers might be kind of wondering a little bit about the topic per se, kind of thinking forward to summer now when we're only just sort of getting to the end of the sort of the first round in the spring. And you touched on it just in those last few points there around, kind of what happened last summer, autumn, and how much feed that you've got on hand. And I know that's fairly widespread. A lot of farmers use more feed than they perhaps normally would, so not carrying over quite as much as they have in previous years, or haven't got as much feed on hand, which is I suspect is the case for you as well, and kind of how this topic came about, I guess, and you're kind of the perfect scenario, if you like, with growing kind of probably three of the most common crops we see in the Waikato. So we touched on it on the intro. So you grow maize, you grow turnips, you grow chicory. Can you just share with us a little bit about what role each of those crops play within the system? And for those that can't remember, there's 13% of the farm that you're putting through a crop of some kind. And I suspect they fulfill quite different roles. So do you want to just elaborate a little bit on terms of what they do for you and how it all works?
Sure. Well, for a start, basically, how we have to think in this situation on this farming system is the winter is now behind us, and I've now got to think 3 months ahead. So basically, I'm thinking now for the summer and how I'm going to not actually beat the summer, how I'm going to be able to manage my summer period. So I don't actually, I'm not stressing now about, any late calvers that we've got. That's all history now. We've got to now focus on growing grass going into summer and getting our crop ground ready and getting our crops in. So as you saw there, we do maize, chicory, and turnips. The maize we utilise as a transition from grass silage into maize once we start running out of grass silage for the milkers, because they're also on turnips over the summer period. We grow on average, we do about 2.2 hectares per mob. We run 2 mobs here on farm. And each paddock there will last about 42 days. And in that time...
That's the turnips?
Of turnips, that's right. Yep. And during that time, they're getting turnips during the day, and then they're getting a bit of grass silage at night. And that's so we can slow the round down. We can maintain our pasture covers going forward, and try and obviously grow some more grass, going into February, March.
Yep.
And then with our maize, that comes off usually sort of the end of February, early March.
Yep.
And then we've pretty much by that stage where we've locked up the grass silage if we've got some left, and we're straight into our maize, and that's transitions up to about 4.5 kilos per cow per day, and that time frame feeding in the paddock, and that'll keep us then going pretty much until dry off, and then we do keep going usually through to May. Once we've dried off, we've built up enough cover, and we can go all grass right through until usually around now. That final push before we hit balance date is when we open up the stack. Mainly, just we've got to keep the cows on that rising plane. So that's where we go with our maize. So
yeah. So do you normally carry maize over season to season, or what do you do there?
Yes. Yeah. We normally carry some maize over. And that's enough to get us through this period now. But unfortunately, with the way the conditions were last year, that we didn't get any significant rain until I think it was May. Correct me if I'm wrong, really. Yep. And by then we were toast. Excuse the pun. So at that stage, the cows were only getting 3.5 kilos of grass, just grass what was available. And they were getting then about 6 to 7 kilos of maize in the paddock. Fortunately, the utilisation was very, very high for obvious reasons. The ground was, bone dry, so it was licked up. There was no wastage, or very, very minimal. So unfortunately, that was just the way it went. And it wasn't until mid-June that once we had the rain, soil moisture had gone through, we'd hit our stride and we were away again. And a point to note there also, once our maize comes off, that's direct drilled straight into annual grass.
Yep.
And then that annual grass, we can utilise that also as a crop. So we feed that as a crop over the winter, and for example now as well. So the cows are on there now, and they're getting their 2/3 of their diet is perennial, and then they're getting 1/3 of their diet at the moment is then the annual grass. So that sort of tops up their day because it's in such bulk that that it's available to them. So
yeah. So what just talk us through what happened with your crops last year, the performance you got out of them, and perhaps we can then, with that in mind, thinking of this year coming, whether there's anything that you're planning to do slightly differently. So what were the results you got out of last year?
We had really, our cropping ground is, we're pretty lucky that it hasn't been cropped a lot in my time here on the farm and previous times. So we crop a lot of our peat area. We've got 30 hectares of peat. So we're able to get a drill into that. So that, with peat being quite fertile, low water or high water table, we can really utilise that quite well. Our maize crop of a P9400 variety, which is the early maturing variety we use, so we can get that off early. We were averaging there about 28 tonne a hectare, wow. So which is really, really good. The average is about 24, on virgin ground. So we're getting a lot of maize for free almost, with that. And the same goes with our turnips that are down on that area. Our turnips are on that area for two reasons. Obviously, one, we can grow good yields. We're harvesting about 14.4 tonne of clean crop toto we use down there, and also logistics. Just the way the farm is that there's two races, so we can split the herds off on a daily basis, just like this here, and they go straight down to the crop, and then they can walk to their day break and then walk to their night break without actually having to incur extra mileage, so to speak. So we do get exceptional yields from that area, and that's also evident in our yields of annual that we put down there as well. We're using Winter Star, being a tetraploid, and that's on usually this year. Late July, early August was quite wet, but normally we're on that that's on a 28-day round, going to about 3,500, 3,600 covers. So we can really nail that. Feed it some urea, and then it's away again. And like I said, on a 28-day round, the cows are back in there, and so it's really good.
Fits nicely for some early season pasture production.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, bulk feed. Yeah.
Yeah. So those yields are they're well above average. They're phenomenally good. What are you? So can you just talk us through, other than soil type, because that obviously plays a really critical factor in terms of, but that's outside a lot of farmers' control. What are the things that you are doing in terms of prepping or prepping for that crop for this coming season? There's some critical things that you do in terms of timing. You've talked a little bit about hybrid selection, but crop selection, fertilizer, crop management and establishment. How do you sort of get that up and started the best way you can?
I suppose the best advice I was given and I can give is listen to the reps. If they're saying you've got to spray this or use this, and it's recommended to do it that way, do it. And we follow that every year without fail. and that's how we're getting the yields. You know, we spray for white butterfly. We don't take that chance that we don't spray for white butterfly. We spray for weeds so that particularly with turnips, you know, so that we don't the leaf isn't smothered by, you know, any nightshade or anything else that gets in there. And obviously we stick to the fertilizer regime that is recommended for that particular paddock, and we put that on at the set rate at a time. One thing I do have to say is also we do monitor the soil temperature quite closely. So, you know, we don't plant in, you know, in early September. A lot of guys around us are planting their maize, you know, sort of mid-September, and we don't plant until Labour weekend, when we know that we've got good soil temperature. The strike rate is going to be high. The paddocks aren't going to be flooded, you know, with the belters of rain, you know, that come through, that sweep through the area in spring. So they're not going to drown, and the strike rate being high with good soil temperatures, it's instant. You know, the guys, some guys can be 3 weeks planted ahead of us, and you can just see the plant just sitting there, and ours is at the same time. And come Christmas time, we're all above fence height, just like everyone else. But I've managed to, with annual, where the maize is, for example, I've managed to get another round out. So I've managed to, you know, sneak in another feed on top of that as well. So I've really utilised the bulk pasture. It's now, and you can physically see that it's at its end of life as such, particularly with the annual. We've grazed it to its maximum. It's started to thin out. The swords are getting smaller, and the soil is starting to warm up, and it's not able to perform as well as it has done in the past. So, you know, that's one, you know, in our system anyway, that's how it's working well for us.
So that's really great. Like, you know, so you're saying, hey, well, Labour weekend we can get maize in, for example, at Labour weekend, because it sort of suits the environment that you're planting in, both the soil type and the area that you're planting. What about and that's, I guess that's really critical for farmers to be thinking about. There's a little bit more opportunity to manipulate timing now than there perhaps was 5 or 10 years ago with crops. I know maize in particular, but you know, that ability to manipulate the timing and give you another pasture rotation in the spring is pretty critical. What's your timing around your other crops? So your chicory and your turnips, when are you hooking into those?
Turnips go in around the same time. Yep. So we can, you know, really utilise and get the maximum yield off the annual at the time. We don't lock it up for silage like a lot of guys do, because there's just too much water in it, and we feel there's too much water in it, and for what we've got to for what the yield out of it is, we're better off putting it in the vat. The turnips we do the same time, because then we usually start harvesting the turnips around the 10th of January. So sort of after the silly season, when everyone's had a break, you know, and there's that little bit of time where, you know, people have ducked off the beach. My staff have ducked off to the beach for a couple of days. We've had a good break, and then, okay, we'll start on this day. So yeah, we utilise that. The chicory, that's a new introduction onto the farm. We're into our this will be coming into our third season of using it now. We haven't got a set date with chicory as such, because it's not as dependent on soil temperatures as the other crops are as such. It's a lot easier to grow. But yeah, the chicory is utilised for the calves going into January, February. So if we do plan around 75 days from the day we want to plant it, we're ready to go for the calves for that as well.
So is that, so the chicory is coming online what, sort of mid-December-ish, somewhere there?
Yes.
Is it? Or that's kind of the target, sort of starting to feed it.
Usually just before Christmas, we like to get the calves onto the chicory to get them not weaned onto it. They're used to sort of lush pasture, and then all of a sudden they're going on to a different crop. So that takes about 2 or 3 days for them to wean onto that. So it does take them a little bit to get used to, but once they're on it, they're away.
Yeah, nice. So what sort of feeding rates are you feeding then to your calves? And did chicory, how did it handle the season last year? Because we didn't touch on that much earlier. How did it go?
Last year when we put it in, we actually we utilised it in the worst performing paddocks on the farm. Yeah. So it didn't go as good as we would wish, but that's okay. We knew that we couldn't really get any water to it as such. But what we're doing this year is that's going onto effluent ground. So that's slightly different situation. But that was on a 24-day rotation, the chicory, and so we worked out about the calves were getting about 6 kgs a day, between 4 to 6 kgs a day on the first round, 6 kgs on the first round, 4 on the second, and then to top them up, they were getting a bit of silage, and then the last rounds they were then supplemented with calf meal and maize because. So by that stage, there was nothing left. The
yields sort of petered out towards the end. Obviously, it succumbed to the dry. Sure. And so, so just with the area of crop that you've got out, because you're a little bit unusual. It's probably a little more than perhaps the average farm. With 13% of your area out. Does that cause you any issues or pinches? You've obviously got quite an area that comes out sort of late October, and while you're waiting for certainly your grazed crops, your chicory and your turnips to come online, you've got to wait for that, obviously. And then at the other end, when you're kind of waiting for that to come back into pasture production in the autumn, does it create any sort of potential pinches or issues with having that larger area out?
We haven't found because of our location where we are. We can be going here, 55, 60 kgs dry matter a day, and then all of a sudden we'll go up in 1 week to between 80 to 110. So once we hit that sort of growth rates, we literally just cannot keep on top of it. So it actually becomes a battle to keep the grass under control. So we do make quite a bit of silage on farm as well, and obviously bales. As an example, we did. I only locked up one. We did have a small surplus, what I thought was a small surplus of 10 hectares, and it turned out to be 220 bales. So I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't actually budgeted for 220 bales, but it suited the system, worked well, and we don't really feel the pinch. We do manage our stock in a way that we do a pre-Christmas cull. So we herd test, obviously, and anything that's not performing or has had a history of mastitis or something like that, they do have to go. We can't afford to have laggards on the farm. It just doesn't work. So, and then also once we scan for our pregnancy results, also then it's any empties are straight away, they're gone. So we can utilize the feed on hand available to maximize what we can on farm.
And what about at the back end of the season? What do you experience in the autumn typically? Last year was a real extreme, but while you're typically waiting for those areas to come back into pasture production, most farms are trying to extend rotation and achieve cow condition and all those other good things that you're wanting to do in preparation for the next season. Does it cause you any pain just while you're waiting for that area to come back into production?
No. To be honest, it hasn't done in the past. Because we've we use the short maturation maize, the 9400. So, I mean, as the chopper's driving out, the drill is driving in. So he's literally only 2 days behind, and that's we run the cows over the maize. They just do a little bit of a cleanup, and then the drill is in straight away with annual, and we're usually grazing that annual. The first grazing is mid-April. The calves are on that mid-April because they're still on farm until the 1st of May. So they whip round the annual, take the tops off, and then by sort of mid-May, we can start grazing that for the cows, and then we can slow the round down because we're going into bulk feed. We've got maize on hand available and bulk feed and the annual, and then we're straight into it. So it's not generally an issue.
Yep, perfect. So we've really only got probably a minute or two left. In terms of cropping cropping in general, it can be quite an expensive exercise. How do you kind of justify in your own mind? I suppose your system really hinges around a big deficit that you've got to fill in the summer. In your case, and you're reliant on homegrown feed. The cost side of it, you're happy that you're able to sort of keep that under control, and the cost of that feed is pretty economic.
Yes. The biggest question is well, if I don't do it, what am I going to fill that void with, basically, which is the hard part. And as I've discussed with you before, yes, I can pull out these crops, but then I've got to actually fill it with something else. So it's quite hard to be able to fill that void unless I reduce my stocking rate even more, and then but then we go into an area of, well, I can't manage the grass anymore. So but because we're getting such good yields from our crop, it's bringing our costs down. So our turnips, we're doing around 50-50. We're doing those for around 7 or 8 cents, I believe. So it's quite cheap feed. And again, the same with the chicory for the calves. It's a cost, but if I leave the calves, not roaming around the farm, but on pasture, I've got to grow another 15 ton of dry matter to feed the calves alone, not including what I've got in milking animals. So I've still got to feed them. So in that sense, it can be a bit of a number crunching, but we try to do as much as we can ourselves. All the spraying I do myself, so we cope with that in that respect. And the groundwork is minimal. So being a flat farm, it's quite easy to do. So no obstacles anywhere.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really good point there, Matt, isn't it? Like if you say, hey, look, well, if we go down the alternative pathway and we want to remain a system one and really rely on our own grown feed, the alternative is that you have to harvest a lot of surplus to try and fill that summer gap, and whether you could or not would be a feed budgeting question that you could answer through a feed budget. But it would be a significant block of feed that you would need, and it probably wouldn't be sufficient on its own. You'd probably have to adjust cow numbers or dry off dates or kind of some other levers to try and kind of manage your way through.
But not only that, again, then it also goes back to the your pasture quality, and that's what it's all about on this system is pasture quality. And once we lose control, it's without putting a mower on, it's pretty hard to maintain that pasture quality.
No, 100%. And just for the viewers, we're probably towards the end. I did do a quick sensitivity analysis just on maize growing and harvesting costs and then also summer growing costs. So for those that are still online and looking at that sheet there, the sort of yields, if you're talking a maize crop for you, depending on the cost to grow per hectare. So the low end there is if you're on really high fertility ground, and the higher cost to grow and harvest is typically when it requires sort of full fertilizer regime, but you're somewhere in the 15 to 22 cents a kilogram for that extra feed. And then if we look over on the summer crop side, again, if you can grow it on sort of highly fertile ground, you're in the sort of anywhere from sort of 12 to 22 cents, depending on the yield, out to about sort of 20 to 30 cents. So it's I think probably the thing there is that the fact that you're getting those incredibly high yields is your number one kind of benefit from a cost point of view. Look, any final points, Matt? Like we've come out of a pretty tough season last year. Largely, is your regime going to stay the same, or are you kind of making a few little tweaks?
No, we're sticking with the status quo. We know we can make it work. I suppose what so the main tweak this season we're looking at is, I suppose, not be so frightened. Once I lock up silage, I've got faith in that I can grow grass and not to harvest it as quick. Leave it for an extra, half a round. The quality might drop a little bit, yes, but I'm going to get some more bulk than not that I don't need it, but it's more bulk than I've had in previous years. But I'm putting more faith into our system now, because I know we can grow grass. Since I've been here on the farm, we've increased dry matter production by about 400 kilos a hectare now. So that's through cropping, pasture management, right time, right place, with urea applications and that sort of thing. So we've got faith in the system now, so it's really good.
Yeah, awesome. And look, that's probably a good place to finish, to be honest, Matt. Some really key. I think that the key thing I sort of take away from this is that you've kind of really clearly defined kind of the system and the limitations of that system, and said, hey, look, this is the perfect kind of mix of crops for what I want to achieve and the gaps that I'm trying to fill. It's not necessarily saying that that's going to work, and there'll be other farmers with different sort of ways of achieving the outcomes that they want to achieve, but you've kind of identified what works perfectly for you, and that includes being able to keep the young stock at home and really rely on that homegrown feed. So great to have you on online and share a few of your insights. It's pretty exciting to see these system ones that we don't get to see very often, and just get a bit of a feel for how you do what you do in probably slightly more extreme weather events that we seem to be experiencing compared to what we've seen in the past. So thanks for sharing. I'm going to hand back to Anne-Marie just to do a quick wrap up, and
Thank you so much for a really informative chat, Wade and Matthew. It's been great eavesdropping on you. Really appreciate your time and your sharing of knowledge and learnings as well. Thank you once again also to our SMASH sponsors, Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer, LIC and Rabobank. Make sure you follow our Facebook page for upcoming events and register at our website, smallerherds.co.nz. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. I'll see you next time. Ka kite anō.